I'm not sure if you know this, but watercolor paper can actually deteriorate with time. More specifically, I'm referring to the sizing on watercolor paper. Now, sizing is basically the addition of gelatin, either internally or externally to the paper to turn the paper into watercolor paper. The reason for sizing paper is so that when you paint with watercolor, the water and the paint doesn't actually soak through the paper and go to the opposite page. So when paper loses its sizing, the watercolor, the paint, the water would actually soak through, and because the paper now absorbs the pigments, the paint, it's very difficult to get the colors to blend, to move around, and also when the pigments are in the paper, they are not on the surface of the paper, the colors, they will not be as vibrant. So here I have a sketchbook with affected paper, and the colors, they are very washed out, they are not intense, they are pastel-like. With good watercolor paper, the colors will appear more vibrant because when light hits the paper, it's reflected and it goes through the paint that's on the paper. Another way to identify deteriorated sizing is to look at the paper texture. So when you're painting on the paper, does it look like the paper fiber is coming out? And when the paint is dry, can you see very weird patterns, such as the case here? And when the paint is dry, do you see a lot of white of the paper? If you see a lot of white, it means the paint has been absorbed into the paper beneath the paper surface. That's why you don't see the paint on the surface, and that's why you see a lot more white, and the colors, they will appear less vibrant. 4 years ago, I made a batch of sketchbooks using the same watercolor paper, and these are two of the sketchbooks. On the right side here, this sketch was painted in 2015. On the left side, this was painted in 2019. So there is a difference of 4 years between this sketch, and you can see the difference in color. This paper, by the way, it's Fabriano Artistico paper. So this color, it's sap green. You can see this color is quite intense. It covers the paper really well. You do not see the white of the paper showing through. And this is the affected paper. This color is also sap green, but here the colors, they appear to be a bit more washed out. And I can see a bit of the paper white showing through, and also this weird paper texture that is going on. So why does watercolor paper deteriorate with time? Well, the main reason is gelatin is water soluble, and if you store watercolor paper in conditions where the humidity is high, that's going to dissolve the gelatin on the paper, and that's going to affect the paper, and that's what happened with some of my sketchbooks. After you have painted on the watercolor paper, it doesn't really matter whether or not the sizing will deteriorate with time, because after you have painted on the paper, the paint is on the paper, it has dried, it's not going to move anymore. The paper you use matters also. So for example, here, this is the Strathmore Visual Journal with watercolor paper. I bought this spiral bound watercolor pad in 2017, and when I painted on it, the colors, they appear vibrant. The blacks, they appear very black, very intense. The contrast is very strong. The colors, they do not appear washed out at all. So why is the sizing on this paper not affected even after 2.5 years? Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you. All I can say is the paper quality for this watercolor journal, it's quite good and quite durable. And when you see ink or water soak through the paper, it's very clear that the paper is affected, such as the case here. This is 300 GSM paper, so it's quite thick, but the sizing has been affected. That's why you see the ink soaking through the paper. So is it possible to apply sizing back onto the paper? Is it possible to restore affected paper? That's what I'm going to find out for you guys. So here I have this bottle of sizing. This is sizing liquid made by Holbein. And here it says that this is an artist grade sizing liquid used to reduce the absorbency of paper. Apply with broad brush and dry well. I bought this for 10 Singapore dollars, which is around US $7.50. So this opening, it's quite small. I can just drip it onto my broad brush and spread it out evenly. Right, let's apply this on the paper. So this is very clearly affected paper. I'm going to apply a thin layer of sizing on this paper. So I'm going to wait for a day or two for this to dry properly, and we will sketch and paint on the paper to see what happens. I also bought the Daniel Smith watercolor ground. It's supposed to do the same job as the Holbein sizing liquid. I just want to compare the quality. This comes in different colors. The one that I have here, it's titanium white. So this can be painted onto canvas, paper, plaster, and you should wait for 24 to 48 hours before using the paper. Do not apply heat to speed the drying time. The paper that I have here, it's also affected, so let's paint a light layer, a thin layer of this watercolor ground onto the paper. This is too thick. It's very difficult to paint with, so I'm going to add some water to dilute this. So now with water added, it's so much easier to paint with. This is a rather big bottle of watercolor ground from Daniel Smith, so I'm sure it's going to last me for quite a while, and that's great because I have a lot more pages I need to repair. The pages are now dry after 2 days. The look and feel of the page here that's sized with the Holbein sizing liquid, it looks the same as the original paper. As for these 2 pages that were sized with the Daniel Smith watercolor ground, I used too much of it here, so it looks white against this creamy color paper and it feels a bit chalky. For the page on the right side, I diluted the watercolor ground and managed to paint over the page quite evenly. Let's quickly draw something and see how pen and ink, how it works on the paper. So the pen, it works fine. It's not very different from drawing on normal watercolor paper. So that's great. And I don't see any feathering of the ink, so the edges, they are still quite sharp. So right now it seems like the sizing, it hasn't affected how the ink reacts on paper. So you can see the lines, they are very sharp. This ink that I'm using, it's sketch ink, which is waterproof when dry. Now we have the moment of truth. Let's see what's going to happen when we color this. I can definitely see some improvement. So the colors, they still appear to be quite vibrant on the paper. With paper that has gone bad, when I apply paint straight away, I can tell, I can see that something is wrong, but here it looks fine. Although there is still some strange texture of the paper showing through, but generally speaking, it's better compared to painting on the paper where the sizing has really gone bad. Now that this part has dried, I can see the colors again. They started to fade slightly, but it's definitely better than not having the sizing on the paper. The paper that I was drawing earlier on was hot press, and now I'm drawing on cold press paper with more texture. And the feeling of drawing on this paper that has been sized with the watercolor ground, it's no different from drawing on original watercolor paper. When drawing on this area where I applied too much ground, I can hear that the paper is quite grainy. But the ink, the lines still look very sharp, doesn't feather, and the lines, they look quite dark, which is great. When I was drawing on paper where the sizing has gone bad, I could see the lines, they were not as dark. The black wasn't as black, but here it looks very black. I can see, not just see, but also feel the difference when painting on this treated paper. So now the color is way more vibrant. It looks like the paper is not absorbing too much water now. So now the water and the paint, it's actually on the paper rather than soaking the paper, which is great because this will give you more vibrant colors. Here the colors, they appear to be more vibrant even when dry, so clearly this paper, it has been repaired. The way watercolor behaves on this paper, it's no different from normal watercolor paper that has proper sizing, so that's fantastic. So this is how the colors look. It seems like on cold press the colors, they look a bit more vibrant compared to the hot press, so that could be due to the sizing that I applied, or it could be due to the paper because I used the same watercolor paint, so they should look pretty similar in terms of how vibrant they are, but here I can see the colors, they are more vibrant here, so maybe the Daniel Smith watercolor ground, it's more effective. But this is a huge improvement over paper where the sizing has gone bad. I'm actually using the same side of the paper as I have used here, but here I can see the weird paper texture, but here it looks fine. So clearly the Holbein sizing liquid and the Daniel Smith watercolor ground, they do help at restoring the sizing for watercolor paper. If you want your paper to appear as original as possible without any changes to the color of the paper surface, you may want to get the Holbein sizing liquid, which is clear and transparent. For the Daniel Smith watercolor ground, this is a much bigger bottle, so this is going to last much longer, and you can dilute the watercolor ground with water, so you don't have to apply it like this, and if you dilute it, it's going to last even longer. The main consideration here is this is white, so if you're painting on off-white paper, creamy paper, the color is going to be affected slightly, but if you dilute it enough, I don't think you will be able to see any difference. I'm very happy to know that these two products are quite effective at restoring watercolor paper that has deteriorated sizing. And not just that, you can also paint over other types of paper to make them work with watercolor paint. So these two are good products. I'll be using them a lot. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. And if you have been using these products, I would love to find out from you what you think about them. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.